Hey everybody, I am here with my friend Adam, who is a vascular surgery nurse practitioner who's got a wealth of information to share with us about this specialty, as well as some of his background and all the usual stuff that I ask everybody. If we haven't met yet, my name is Bree. I'm an RNFA mentor, content creator, and interview strategist. Welcome to the channel. So tell me about your background in nursing.
So I originally started out in a neuro trauma ICU up in North Georgia, and I did that for around 5 years. Then I went back to school. I realized pretty quickly that bedside nursing wasn't really my thing.
Not it.
Yeah. It was great. I just knew that there was more out there, and so I went back to school. Was fortunate enough to get hooked up with a team at Northeast Georgia Medical Center for my first NP job, and then I did that for about 5 to 6 years, and then now I'm with vascular surgery.
Very interesting. I mean, you had a great foundation to lead you exactly where you are right now. So how did you? Okay. So first of all, when you decided to go to school to become a nurse practitioner, was it hard to make a choice on what school you went to?
It wasn't really hard for me because at the time there was really only I wanted to do something distance learning that I could do online because I wanted to continue to work. And,
sure.
I was married at the time, and so I needed to stay full time. But there was really only one program at the time that you could get in-state tuition.
Yeah.
And because Georgia didn't have a distance learning program.
When did you go back to school?
That's a very good question. I should know that. I think 2012.
Okay, yeah, you were before me. And when I went back in 2015, 2016, my school was in person, but everybody was kind of shifting more towards this hybrid or all online thing, which is such a weird swing, isn't it?
Yeah.
But, okay. So did you feel that school prepared you well?
You know, I think they do the best job that they can, for sure. I think the didactic portion for sure was very good. I was lucky that the program that I was in was very well prepared as far as didactics go. I think sometimes there's a question about whether or not PA school is better for didactics and things like that. But I don't mind telling you, I went to UAB, and I thought they did a fantastic job as far as the didactics go and the pacing of it.
Yeah.
And kind of the level of detail that they expect you to master before you graduate. But as far as like the day-to-day, like what does an NP really do? I think it's really hard for a school to kind of prepare you for that.
For sure. There's so many specialties you can go into, and they're all going to vary so much.
Right.
So you worked full-time? Holy mackerel.
Yeah, it was a lot. So my wife would tell you that she used to get really frustrated with me because I would work all night long as a RN in the trauma ICU that I worked in at the time, and then I would when my shift ended, I would take my nursing scrubs off, put on surgical scrubs, and then round for the trauma service all day. So I'd go like 24, 36 hours at a time, just fall asleep at our friend's house.
How is that even possible? You were going to friend's house? You're blowing my mind right now.
But I would fall asleep, so I wasn't really
but you were making the effort. Holy cow, to me, you've got to pick like the top 2 things you're going to accomplish in your life when you're in school. It's usually, for me, it was not actively doing anything with friends, that's for sure. It was like distance, like, how you doing? I'll check in with you in 2 years.
We'll see.
That's a lot. Wow, kudos to you. That's a lot of people in our area go to UAB. We're in the North Georgia area. A lot of students go to UAB. They do a pretty darn good job of preparing students. You know, I've said that, and I've had many people on my show who have said that as well. Okay, so let's talk about your first job as a nurse practitioner. Did you find it hard to acquire a job?
I was very, very lucky. I mean, I know a lot of people in my cohort were super worried about that. And at the time when I didn't get in much earlier than you did, but at the time it started to seem like it was becoming saturated, and everybody was talking about, do I want to go back to nurse, for nurse practitioner, and the role was really kind of coming into its own. I think at that time it was only several years earlier that ACMP was even designated as a thing.
It's true.
Because it used to be, or AGACMP, I should say, because it used to be just ACMP.
Or adult NP.
Or adult NP, exactly. And so there was a lot of, kind of worry about that. But I got very lucky, I think, in so much that I had a job lined up before I even graduated. Although I will say that put some extra pressure.
Now, you got that through networking, like for the place that you were already working, or you knew someone?
So it's interesting. I worked at the time. I worked at Northside, Maine, and I was in the medical ICU there. I've worked in almost all the different ICUs.
You and me both, all over Georgia.
Yeah. So I have all the systems, and the systems are vastly different.
Very
which is
different.
So interesting.
The cultures are different.
Yes,
Everybody's different there.
But at the time I was there, and there was a nurse practitioner that I had really kind of connected with and kind of identified with how she practiced, and I had asked her if I could do my final clinicals with her, and actually it was my first clinical. I'll take that back. It was my first clinical out of the 3 in my program, and she said, "I'm too new. I don't think that you would get a good kind of experience with me, but I know someone, one of my instructors, and I'll put you in touch with them." She put me in touch with her. Her husband was married to the medical director for a trauma center here in the area, and so they were willing to take me on. And so I did my first clinical with them, and I was awful, but they knew that I kind of showed them my work ethic, and so when I got ready to graduate, they needed help, and they were more than willing to give me a chance, and I was very appreciative.
Yeah, and you started with that group when it was a pretty small group.
Very small. Yeah, and it grew rapidly.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did. Now you'll have a bunch of people.
Yeah, exponentially.
Yeah, for sure. How did you find the onboarding with that job?
I thought it was great. It was just me and another nurse practitioner at the time. And as far as like the professional onboarding with getting credentialing and all of that stuff, that can be, as you know, that can be
very time consuming.
But they did a fantastic job. It was my first experience with it, but they pretty much handled the whole thing and did a great job. And then as far as getting up to speed from a clinical standpoint, the guys and my partner that was with me, they poured into me and really kind of did a good job of setting me up for success.
Yeah. I was actually just having this discussion with a former student of mine who's looking at getting a job, and I've interviewed other people too that have started with very young or even brand new services and starting from the ground up, and is this a good idea or not? And some people have hesitations about, I think it's a fabulous idea because you're invested in growing this program as much as they are. So they're going to actually pour into you more than they would when they're busy and they just need another warm body. So I think it's really great to start with a novice group like that.
Right.
It's interesting you bring that up. I was just talking about it today. I
agree. And the other thing is, if the smaller the group is, the closer you are to the core of the group. Right?
Absolutely.
And the bigger the group gets, the more on the periphery you can be. And
Absolutely.
you will miss small conversations and miss small details that other people will get to be a part of. Sure. And I think there's a lot to that, because it's not just about learning the clinical aspects of what we do. I think it's also about learning the professional aspects of what we do and how to navigate that landscape. So I got a lot of that just because it was only 2 of us. So.
Yeah, for sure. So tell me what you loved about trauma and what you didn't love about trauma.
Oh gosh, we could be here all night if I tell you what I love about trauma. You've heard the joke, and I'm sure other people who have been on your podcast before have said trauma drama.
Oh yeah,
everybody loves the trauma
junkies.
Yeah, everybody wants to be a part of it. There's those people come in, gunshot wounds, they come in with
stories that you're just like, what?
Yeah, and everybody's like, tell me your crazy story. So that part of it is cool because you're the tip of the spear, right? Sure. And that's really cool. And the other part of it is you get to see you make life and death decisions, and I think learning to do that and having that responsibility puts your mind space in a different place.
Sure.
It allows you to create connections with the people that you work with, that you wouldn't get an opportunity to make otherwise. Because like very well, being in critical care, when you're standing on the other side of the bed and the decisions that you and the person that you're working with are going to make in the next 5 to 10 minutes are going to determine
someone's outcome.
Someone lives or dies. I think that is a connection that you share with your coworkers that is a very special thing, and I enjoyed that.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the plethora of knowledge that we had access to, and that we were expected to have access to. Nothing was off the table. Nothing was off limits. you know, I always say, trauma surgeons are not jacks of all trades and masters of none. They're jacks of all trades and masters of all trades.
Yeah.
And they poured into us and treated us like partners.
Yeah.
And so that was a ton of fun. The downside of the trauma service, obviously, is you could, at the drop of a hat, you got to get up and go.
Yeah.
Right. And so, so there's the positive and the negative to that.
Sure.
And it can take a lot out of you emotionally.
Oh, it absolutely can. I mean, you're talking about, I've always worked in acute care roles, whether it was bedside, ER, ICU. I've always done them. I've always been kind of drawn to that, like, as you said, life and death moment where it feels like you're doing the greatest good and the greatest hour of need someone will have in their entire life. It feels good when you get good at that.
Right.
But the process of getting good at that is really hard.
Terrifying.
You're like, oh my gosh, you're going to make some mistakes along the way that they can totally derail your entire career because you will beat yourself up over it. But again, it's that, like, you feel reward over being so important in someone's life. But there does come a time in your life where that becomes less of a void or less of a reward that you need to fill in your life as you age.
Mm-hmm.
I'm at the point in my career, I'm kind of like, you know what, I love this, but if I wasn't doing this every day, would I be sad? I don't know.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Just get to a point where something a little more stable doesn't sound like a terrible idea.
Exactly.
So is that what prompted you to make the transition to vascular surgery?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, really, that was the main kind of thing that steered me in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
I think, my family was expanding, and
stability is valued.
Yes,
growing.
and coming home just beat up emotionally sometimes. It felt like it was time for me to kind of move on and learn a new skill.
Sure.
And I had been in the trauma world and the acute care world and the critical care world for so long at that point that I just felt like I wonder if I could be good at something else.
Sure.
And I think it's important to always challenge yourself and always be looking for what's next. And I think if you are always looking for those things, then that allows you to do the best good for the most people.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of felt like it was a responsibility to get out of my comfort zone again and try to learn something new.
That's how I did my entire career. Like, I could tell when I was getting really confident at a job because I was like, what's next? Like, I need to learn something new. I need to do something new. And I know a lot of people, nurses and NPs, who stayed in the same job their entire career, and there's nothing wrong with that. But you're not going to grow anymore. You're not going to expand your knowledge base. And if you stay within the same health system your entire career, you're missing out on so much that you could learn and do and just become so much more proficient at, I don't know. I could see both sides of the coin, but I would definitely not shy away from, people will ask me, they're so terrified about taking their first NP job. And my advice is always, your first job is not going to be your last job. You're going to do many things in your career that will fulfill you. So don't be so caught up in all that. It's always good to switch it up and learn something new. Yeah. So tell me about your vascular surgery experience. When you switch from one specialty to another, is it like starting all over as an NP?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So, interesting. I didn't just move specialties. I went from hospital-based practice to private practice,
it's totally different.
Which is also a completely
totally
different world. Yeah. I think, learning that new specialty, I can tell you that about 6 months in, I had a conversation with one of the very well-tenured surgeons at our hospital. And he's like, man, I'm sure that, bringing all that knowledge from the trauma and critical care service that you were on probably served you really well. And I said, I think it served me really well in that it taught me how to learn.
Sure.
But I can't think of a single decision that I made in a patient's care that was directly related to anything I knew from critical care.
You mean there were no like penetrating injuries in a major artery that you're like, I know that artery?
The anatomy, that's about it. You're right. Yeah. So the anatomy was about it. Yeah, but the physiology and actually the lens that you're looking through, I had to throw the other lens away.
Yeah.
I think it served me well in that way because I was like, I got to relearn everything that I've learned before. And the other thing is not just the clinical portion I was learning, but I also learned that if you're in one specialty you can begin to believe that the way you're doing things and the way your specialty does things and looks at it is the only way. Right?
So true.
And
so true.
I cannot believe that they don't know that they're doing it
That's,
wrong.
that's absolutely right.
But I've learned.
Yeah.
I've learned through mistakes and through a lot of experiences that there are a lot of different ways to do things, and that
for sure,
and that looking through different lenses is a good thing and not a bad thing.
I agree. There are times when we call consultants and I'm like, but they're wrong. And I'm like, what makes me think that I know more than a vascular surgeon? I clearly don't.
Right.
I should trust their opinion.
Right.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about what you do. You already said you work in clinic, so tell me a little bit about your schedule, how you see patients, if you're in the OR, all the things.
Yeah, so we kind of are in a my senior physician. He coined the phrase, we are in a situation of rapid evolution. So we are constantly changing how our things are moving now. We've had some moving pieces within our practice. But I've been fortunate enough to be given an opportunity to be integral in how we set that up.
Nice.
And so right now the way things are set up is I do clinic every week, but I have specific clinic days. The people that I work for now were very kind and sent me back to school to do RNFA.
Nice.
So
how long? Let's pause there. Okay. So how long did that take?
So again, I was able to do it distance learning, completely online,
That's
which
crazy
is really
to me.
cool.
Like you're learning to suture, you're learning to do all of these things online. That kind of blows my mind a little bit.
Yeah. So, and I was like, how's that going to work? Because I want to be prepared, right? I don't want to just like do
check off the box.
Yeah, I don't want to just do some ticky tack whatever, and just check a box and sign a piece of paper. Yeah. But the way they set it up is they have these specific to the program that I did. You can go to these suture workshops.
I see. Like you just dogpile all your stuff in one moment.
Yeah, like 3 to 5 days. Yeah.
Gotcha. You're just gonna go through procedure after procedure. Oh
right.
my gosh.
Or
overwhelmed.
The other way you can do it is they have a form and your sponsoring physician can watch you suture and do things and sign off that you're already ready, right? Because
gotcha.
And I think there were some requirements where you had to have already been practicing for a certain period of time, and them assuming that you've probably done some suturing,
gotcha,
and things like that. But the didactics was all online, and then I had 140 clinical hours actually in the operating room that I had to do.
I think that would actually be ideal, right? Because you're learning the foundations, through your program, but you're learning the hands-on skills with the people you're going to be working with.
Absolutely.
So you go in with, the terms and the tools, and I'd be like, can you pass me that thing right there?
The whatchamajig?
The thingamabobber right there, and I have no idea what that is.
Yeah.
So you don't walk in like totally blind your first day in the OR with your surgeon, like, I don't know what that means.
Yeah. And I can tell you that specifically, that learning what all of the different instruments are in a book is literally impossible.
I can imagine,
because they're going to hand you something,
many.
and there's like 4 different names for every one of them.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and every surgeon calls them a different thing.
Yeah, the world of the OR is, I know what is and is not for me, and it is not for me. It is overwhelming to even think about.
It is a special place. Yes, it is a special place.
So you did your RNFA, they paid for that, that's phenomenal. And then you were telling me about your rotation between clinic and when you go into the OR.
Yeah, so I have specific OR days. So we have EVOR days, which is really cool. That's like the Starship Enterprise. And we do all this crazy stuff in the special room. And so we have those times set apart. So it's a very good mix. I do a lot of rounding in the hospital, and we do, and we make time for that as well. And so it's a really good mix of being able to see patients in clinic and establish a relationship with them. One of the cool things about vascular surgery is there's a little bit of primary care to it.
Yeah.
And most of my patients, we see them, most of their pathologies require that we routinely monitor it 6 months, 3 months, a year, depending on what we're looking at. And so they see me once a year at minimum, right? And they're like, "Hey, Adam," I'm like, "Hey, how have you been this last year? Is everything going okay?" So you create that relationship with them, and so that's something that you don't really get,
definitely not in acute care.
Yeah, not in acute care, and certainly not with trauma. So that was a cool thing that got added as I made the transition. And so I really kind of enjoy that. And then on the
Mm-hmm.
other end, I get to take care of really sick people in the hospital and still get to do the OR. So it's a really good mix.
Yeah, I could see where that would be the case. You get some variety in there.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking through when you were talking about like primary care, because I guess like hypertension and smoking cessation and all of that is going to come big into play for you. It's not all just surgical management, right?
Absolutely. Matter of fact, there are vascular medicine doctors who do a specific residency in vascular medicine and not vascular surgery.
And is that mostly like disease education and modification, or
Yeah, a lot of that.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me about some of the types of cases that you see or participate in.
So I would say that there's really only 5 things that we do.
Okay.
Aortas, carotids, fistulas, peripheral vascular disease, and what was the 5th one? I don't remember. Well, really only 4. And it's not about, when you're doing a specialty like vascular surgery, you don't have to know have to know a little bit about a lot. You just have to know a lot
about a little, which is the total opposite of what you've been doing, right? So
right. You got to really narrow it down. I think when you kind of change your perspective and start looking at things under a very fine microscope, you start to learn more about how the body works as a whole.
Sure.
Even though you're looking at only one system.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird, but it's
I
really
can totally see that though, and I can very much also see why, some of my other friends in specialties that see a huge number of patients throughout the day, they can get through them very quickly because like you're staying in your lane, right? Diabetes, I ain't worried about that today. That is somebody else's problem. Like stick to my lane, focus on what I do best and just hammer it out really, really well. Yeah. Which is why when I call a vascular surgeon, I say, I have no idea what I'm doing. Tell me what to do. I never assume I know more than you.
We say, not my monkey, not my circus.
Right? Yeah.
Veins. That's number 5. Veins.
Yeah.
I remember.
Sure. Clots.
Yeah, clots and venous reflux and stuff like that.
And stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're almost looking at cosmetic to like life-threatening stuff, critical limbs, all kind of, I can see where you get a good mix.
It's a giant spectrum.
Yeah. Very cool. Okay. All right, so I guess my next question is, how long did it take you to feel like competent in doing vascular surgery?
TBD.
Still in the process, right?
I think, and when you're a new nurse practitioner or a nurse practitioner in a new specialty, I think it's really, really important to be self-aware. And I think that's something that's important to learn, especially for new nurse practitioners, because we always say you don't know what you don't know.
Yep.
And it's important to realize that you don't know what you don't know, and you have to be kind of receptive to believing that you've missed something, assuming that you've missed something.
Sure.
And I still approach every patient with a certain amount of trepidation and a certain amount of.
I think that's healthy.
Yes,
that's a good thing.
Yes, it is.
I would never want to be complacent.
No.
To me, there's a difference between being competent and then confident and complacent. And it's sort of a spectrum, and you can kind of shift back and forth on that spectrum sometimes.
100%.
But yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. And you've been doing it for how long now?
About 1.5 years. I would say somewhere around, to your point though, I would say somewhere around 8 months to 9 months, somewhere in there. I was like, okay, I
feel pretty good about this.
I can do this. Yeah. I don't feel like I have to, run every single decision and every single question by the physician.
Right.
I feel like I'm kind of getting a feel for this now.
Yeah, I would say that's about true for most people in most services. Okay. Do you have good autonomy in your practice?
Yes.
You should love that. Isn't that the best feeling ever?
It is. Yes. I think that's important to look for.
Absolutely.
If you're considering a position, I think, especially with the way that our field is evolving, I think you kind of have a responsibility to make sure that you have autonomy.
Yeah.
And I have been extraordinarily fortunate, again, lucky, or somebody's looking after me. We had a great amount of autonomy with the trauma service, and again, I learned how to manage that autonomy and how to not abuse it.
Sure. That is key. That is the key right there. Let's put that in all caps. That is the key. I mean, to me, that is the beautiful approach to like a pyramid model of healthcare where you have a physician at the helm and you have multiple layers of support underneath, and everybody is competent and know who their resources are, and everybody works well cohesively. And those jobs are a little bit hard to come by.
They are.
You have a good team that respects APPs and that wants to build them up and train them and then let them fly.
That's right. Yeah, and I think it's important to work for a team that wants to create a culture
Absolutely.
like that. If
Absolutely.
it's not there yet, maybe they're working on it, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's important for that to be kind of the process, because that is a more effective team.
Yeah.
And the more effective the team, the better the care, and ultimately that's the goal, right? To take care of people, and I think that's super important. And so we, as we've kind of restructured our specific program, we've really kind of structured it in such a way that everybody is allowed to thrive, and kind of bring their talents to the table, and it's been great for us.
That's beautiful.
Yeah,
that's great. I mean, that's the unicorn job, right? That's the one you want
it
to
is.
keep
I'm so lucky.
So knowing the right
I love it.
questions to ask in your interview, this is how you get here.
Yep,
Talk to people, ask around. I remember my mentor when I was in school said, you're going to want to go to work for someone that gives you autonomy. I was like, I don't know what the heck I'm doing. I want to go to work for someone that holds my hand.
Tell me what to do and I'll do it.
Just trust me. You're going to want it.
Yeah.
She was so right. She was so right about everything.
Yeah.
So any advice for people who are looking for jobs? It seems like you have acquired your jobs. Really, you've been in the right place at the right time, and you've networked really, really well. Do you have any advice for people who are struggling to find a position?
Get yourself out there, put your best foot forward.
Sure.
Those are kind of cliche things to say. Don't be afraid to take a job that you don't necessarily think is the one you want.
Right.
You've got to get your foot in the door, right? I had no idea what I was getting into with the first job that I had. I just knew that there were zeros behind what they were going to give me.
And talks.
Right. And I was like, I got to start somewhere, and who knows how hard or easy or whatever this is going to be, but it's going to be something.
Right.
Whatever you're going to do it, and do it as best as you can.
Because your reputation gets out there, and then people will look to you and they're like, we need a new partner for our vascular surgery team. Let's go find Adam.
Right. And I'll put it, and this isn't to toot my own horn in any way at all, but if you do what you said and you put your best foot forward, and you are kind to the people that you work with, which I think is important, and you include all the people around you, and carry yourself well, then you'll be in a situation where I interviewed for this vascular job, and I didn't even get home before they called me, because they knew who I was, right? They knew.
It was just a formality.
Right. They knew my body of work, and the surgeons that they called, like, hey, what can you tell me about Adam? They had good things to say about me.
Yeah.
But not because but it's because I was genuinely good to those people.
Yeah.
And I think regardless if you're in a job that you don't like right off the bat, you still have to have a good attitude, and you still have to do your best work every time you go to work, because at the end of the day, it's still somebody's mom, somebody's brother, somebody's dad that you're taking care of, and they matter. And if you do that and carry yourself that way, then I think good things will happen.
Yeah. I think that's a great philosophy. I have nothing to add to that. Oh, the last question I always ask people is, did you earn more as a new grad NP than you did as a nurse? I think you've already answered that, because you said there were zeros.
There were zeros. Yeah, I did a lot better.
Yeah. And you went to school early enough that this probably wasn't a big deal for you, but I do feel like in the last couple of years, people keep bringing this up, and it is definitely something you're going to have to look into. But I have to ask everybody that question.
Yeah, when COVID first hit and they were signing all these crazy contracts, my wife was like, you need to go back to bedside nursing. But I was like, I can't.
Yeah.
I don't even know if I could do it anymore.
Yeah.
Can I take an opportunity to say, any nurses that are watching this that are thinking about going to NP school, if you're still a nurse at the bedside and you have been going through this pandemic, you guys are the heroes.
Absolutely. For sure.
We had the easy jobs.
Yes, we totally did. Every single day. You were worth every penny, without a doubt. And we were so thankful that you came to work, and the travelers that came to help us and saved us. Particularly, we were working in a hotspot. So we had a whole unit that was nothing but travel nurses that truly saved our butts. Yeah. Absolutely.
Strong work, guys.
That's a good message to end with. I love that.
Thank you. She is wonderful.
All right. See you later, guys.